Hello VC, this is Roger here. Just going to do an entry, another contest entry. This one for Danny over at Not Enough Records. He finally reached 100. I say finally, he got them pretty quick, I think. 100 subs contest, and I think he's pretty good chunk over 100 already. But congratulations, Danny, on reaching that plateau. I know you'll gain a lot more. You got a great channel. Keep up the great work. He's doing a contest called Lost in the Liner Notes. And he wants us to talk a little bit about some of the liner notes of some of the records that we like. This was tough for me. I read the liner notes, but once I put them on the shelf and put them up, a lot of times I forget where I read information, if I read it in a magazine, if I saw it on the internet, if I saw it on the liner notes, I forget. So I had to go back and scan through several albums, picking up some albums that I thought had liner notes on them, only to find out there wasn't any on them. So I didn't know where I got the information from then. So I did go through and pick up four that I was going to show that I thought had some pretty decent information on them. And I hope you like them. The first one, I'm going to show it. This one right here. This is what we're listening to in the background, if you can hear it. It's the original drum battle, Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich. Me being a drummer, I love albums geared toward drummers and drum music and percussion work. I don't think I'm worth a flip at it, but I love listening to good, solid drumming or percussion work. And these guys, I'd heard of Gene Krupa growing up. Used to watch Buddy Rich on the Tonight Show when he would come on there and various things like that. And I tell you a good one of Buddy Rich. YouTube Buddy Rich and Jerry Lewis. They do a deal together, and Jerry Lewis, halfway decent drummer. Kind of surprised me. But anyway, check that out. It's kind of a funny deal with Buddy Rich and Jerry Lewis. But this has a pretty good set of liner notes on it, talking about the first part of it is pretty much talking about Gene Krupa and his history, and kind of the handoff, I guess you could call it, between the elder statesman of Gene Krupa to kind of the younger jazz guy at the time, Buddy Rich. And that spot in here I was just wanting to read talks about Norman Gantz once wrote, "For many years, jazz fans had argued as to the respective merits of Buddy Rich and Gene Krupa. But in all the years that they have been playing, they never actually met on the same stage. This is the first time it happened, and I think it is one of the most thrilling things I ever heard. Buddy Rich and Gene Krupa in a drum challenge." To Norman's comments, one can only add that because so much happens so fast, there will be no attempt here to tell you who is playing what and when. Drum experts will have a fascinating time, however, figuring it all out. So it's kind of interesting. They don't even tell you who's playing on what song at what point. And so, I mean, you kind of good luck on guessing who's playing at what time. So, and man, to me, they're both so smooth going into it. I can't tell the difference. But a great record. Next, Dave Clark 5. This one I kind of remember because this is one of the, I guess, more recent of any of these that I've picked up. And I remember reading the back of it when I was listening to it. And maybe I had heard this before, but I did not remember it. But I want to read this little first paragraph on here. "The news is out. What it took to topple the flop-haired Beatles from the #1 notch on England's best-selling record chart is now a matter of record. This record. The album's title tells the story. The Dave Clark 5 playing their original hit song, Glad All Over. When their single record version was released in England and rose quickly to the heights of the top 10, it caused such a sensation that the news appeared on the front pages of London's Daily Mail and Daily Mirror. Now, Glad All Over is rising so fast on America's bestseller charts it seems likely that the Tottenham sound of the Dave Clark Five is on its way towards overthrowing the reign of the Beatles in this country as well. Pretty interesting. I didn't realize that were the ones that kind of knocked the Beatles out of the charts. But what was fascinating to me was, let me find it here. Dave Clark is the leader of a group of young men whose musical activities until recently were restricted to playing 3 nights a week in a London ballroom and making an occasional record. As a matter of fact, Dave's original intention in bringing together Mike Smith, Rick Huxley, Lenny Davidson, and Denny Payton was to form a band for the specific purpose of raising money at dances so that Dave's youth club football team could go to Holland for a game against a Dutch group. They were formed to raise money so his football team could go to Holland. I thought, man, and now look at them. Dave Clark Five ended up becoming great international stars. Man, what a change. Pretty interesting stuff there. Next one, the Outlaws. Waylon and Willie, Tom Paul Glazier, and Jessie Coulter. Man, I can't believe I couldn't think of her name. As it says, the Outlaws. And after this was released, they became kind of known as the outlaw music, the Outlaws. But here's a neat little paragraph in here. These are some special people, very special. They've been waiting in the wings for years, too many years, to assume their proper places in the structure of American music. When it became apparent to them that their proper places were perhaps being unduly delayed because of certain resentments harbored against them because of their real and imagined unconventionality, I missed a line. They, by God, decided to take matters in their own hands. There resulted a rather difficult period of figurative doors being smashed and general confusion and name-calling in Nashville. When the smoke cleared and the fallout returned to earth, there was effected a major shift in country music. Progressive country, for want of a better term, was on the map, was here for good. And these are the people responsible for that. Call them outlaws, call them innovators, call them revolutionaries, call them what you will. They're just some good, fine people who are also some of the most gifted songwriters and singers anywhere. They are musical rebels in one sense, in that they challenge the accepted way of doing things. Like all pioneers, they were criticized for that, but time has vindicated them. So, boy, wasn't that true? I mean, we know the stories behind how they had to struggle to get the notoriety, and man, once they did, they took off. And man, you look at classic country now, and a lot of people, they'll think Waylon and Willie. That's two of the main names that come into classic country anymore. So I thought that was pretty neat how talking about their change there. And this one, Molly Hatchet. I brought this one and started looking at it pretty quick. This was the first one that actually came to my mind. A lot of times I look at the first albums that a band puts out, because that's where you'll find some decent liner notes, because they're wanting you to buy their record. And if you don't know anything about them or what they're doing or anything, you're just going, okay, who's this band? You go by gut feeling of the cover, which Molly Hatchet's always had great covers. And so if you don't like that, you got to tell them a little bit. So I thought this was pretty interesting. I knew they're considered, I guess you could classify them as Southern rock. But while most lay people tend to categorize Southern musicians with the Macon, Muscle Shoals, or Miami empires, The spawning ground for at least 5 top Southern bands was actually in Jacksonville, Florida. It's a well-known fact the very first Allman Brothers Band jam took place there in the park in 1969. And of course, the rest is history. Such locals as King James Version, Magi, 1%, and Sweet Rooster contributed their formidable array of local talent to form such bands as Lynyrd Skynyrd, Grinder Switch, and 38 Special. These bands went on to carve their niche in the world of rock and roll. Meanwhile, back in Jacksonville, an obscure band called Molly Hatchet was dipping in that talent pool once more, coming up with what some would call the best of the rest. But this unprejudiced observer calls the best. These 6 guys sat back, observed what their fellow bands were doing and what they weren't, then hit the road with the obligatory Southern Roadhouse Club bar circuit. So they grew up, cut their teeth with the guys from Lynyrd Skynyrd, 38 Special, all these guys they mentioned. I don't guess I knew that. You know, you always think of these groups as, okay, a lot of time we think they formed in a high school band or a college band or whatever, and then they just got together and started touring and you know, picking up a person here or there. But you know, they were all in that mix together and picking this guy and that guy and whatever from these different bands to form the ultimate band, I guess you could say. And like this guy said, the best of the rest, man. What's crazy, I like this, the fact, like I said, they were picked from these guys. So they knew these guys from Lynyrd Skynyrd, 38 Special, everything. This record came out in '78. This record is dedicated to the memory of Ronnie Van Zant and Roxy Brown, the 2 members of Lynyrd Skynyrd that died in the plane crash of Lynyrd Skynyrd. That plane crash took place October 20th, 1977. So, you know, just a few months later, this album come out. I thought, you know, what a dedication. Shows you how close that knit group, all of those musicians were and how they well knew each other. So anyway, I thought that was some pretty interesting liner notes. Anyway, Danny, keep up the great channel, man. I like your stuff. You always come up with interesting stuff, interesting records. You're so in depth. You're so knowledgeable on them. You can tell you do your research and everything beforehand. You know it real well. So kudos to you on that, man. You do a great job. A well-deserved 100 plus. I know your channel's going to just keep climbing. So congratulations again. I hope you liked the picks I did. And we'll talk to you next time.